Boom.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 12 of BDAchat. Today, joined by the crew, as ever, we've got Rob, we've got David, and we've got Camilla.
Yeah.
We've got me.
Hello.
And today we're talking about, we're trying to give you some insight into the creative world of what we do. And we're going to sort of like I think we've got about 6 episodes with insights about how we deliver projects. And the first thing we're going to tackle with is the main thing that is at the forefront or the beginning of any creative process. It's the brief.
The brief.
If you listen to this, if you're in the marketing industry, or if you've done any project-based, you'll probably always start with a brief. And from that, there are certain things that we think we would talk about and go through what we believe should be in a brief, what can help make a project great by being in a brief, what doesn't need to be in a brief, and that whole briefing process. Of basically hoping to create a brilliant kick-ass project. So, we've also got a freebie. Camilla's got a freebie.
Yeah, I'm going to be giving away a brief template that we use, which is really great. So that's a little freebie, and there'll be more details in the show notes from today.
So when you get it, cut it out. Briefing template.
Yeah,
brilliant. So, who wants to start with the briefing process? I tell you, from a video point of view, the thing that I always want is an idea and a story or a heartbeat or something in there, that gets me to start talking about what I believe that brief could be. But David, where do you want to go?
Should we start with why do we need a brief in the first place? That sounds like a really obvious question, but why? Why do we need one? Robert?
Why do we need a brief, Robert?
Well, thank you. I think it's
no pressure, Robert.
I know. I think
sum it up in a sentence.
In your own time, Robert. It's only a 10-minute podcast.
Thank you. I think it's about conveying what you're trying to do or something you want to achieve. And I think it's that it differs across what you're doing as a company. But I think that brief is all about kind of conveying that message of we want to achieve something. It's either an objective or solving a problem. Mm-hmm. And it's the information around that that's going to help a company or us as an agency come back to you with either the right questions or the right responses. So in its absolute micro format, it's an initial idea, it's a problem or some objectives that you're trying, or an objective that you're trying to achieve.
I guess it also creates clarity for all parties, isn't it?
Completely.
Because there is always that danger that without a brief, things are going to change, evolve, creep. Not be what they first set out to be. And sometimes that happens with a brief as well, don't get me wrong. But at least you've got that as a starting point, haven't you?
Completely. Do you know, I think sometimes briefs are kind of scary for the marketers who are writing them, because they think if I put too much detail in the brief, it's going to be quite rigid what we get back in response. So they try to sometimes keep it more ambiguous, but at the same time as the agency, as the creatives here, we try and narrow it down a little bit more and be more precise. So again, it's that meeting in the middle there, I think.
But surely that's then down to us just to challenge the brief as well.
Yeah.
Completely.
I think sometimes marketers are too afraid, so they're very vague in their briefs. And I think if you're less vague, so objectives, instead of, we want to increase brand awareness, that's so vague. Start an objective with a 2, so to increase X by X, or be quite clever about the brief. You'll probably get more
smart objectives.
You'll probably get a better outcome from your agency.
Well, because I think it goes without saying, the better the brief, the better the end product is going to be.
Yeah.
But I think there's sometimes a danger perhaps to give too much information as well.
Yeah,
I like digging.
You like deep what? Getting a brief.
Get in the brief and then go back and ask the questions and actually find out what is the. And I always like a brief that actually starts not with an objective but a problem. We're losing market share to one of our competitors. We need something. Don't know what it is. Be quite ambiguous with it.
Yeah.
So then it allows us to go away and be really creative. Because sometimes I think a brief that's too fine-tuned down a creative avenue or road means that then you can't go away and be creative, because this is what in the brief has been outlined that they think they need, and then you've got people from the client side that is already, this is our idea, I really need this, and they've got on board with it. They've got other people in the team that are on board with it. It might not be the right thing, but they're going to push that through to completion. But the actual objective, the main outcome, doesn't benefit from the fact that they've just stuck to this one idea and they've not been
Yeah,
brave enough to think a little bit left. Or
that's what an agency's for, isn't it? To come up with the creative ideas, to come up with something that you wouldn't have thought about, because that's what we're experts in. That's the whole point, right? So even if they just come to us with those clear guidelines of, we want to achieve this, we don't know how, but this is what we've got to achieve, and this is by when, and we'll go through all the sections, what a good brief looks like. But that's guideline enough for then the creative people, to have that good time, that nicely defined budget, nicely defined objectives to go, brilliant, this is what we think we can do.
Well, absolutely, yeah, because it's we need to understand what the tone of voice is, who the target audience is, what is it they like or don't like. What have they tried before as well? Anything that shouldn't be said.
Or what's the success criteria? What would be amazing if this happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Because those success criteria don't always have to be financial. It doesn't have to be an uplift in sales. It could be sign-ups for, I don't know.
Or impressions, or shares, or you go to the social world, like anything. Just some kind of time frame, or not time frame, some kind of markers, really.
Yeah.
Some signposts to go, this is what we'd really like the video to do. And we can always build on that as an agency. That's part of our role. To say, actually, wouldn't it be great if it also did this?
Second phase, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I hate that term.
Second phase.
It's like buzzword bingo.
Buzzword. Don't like it. Do we need to define these in like a top 5? I love top 5s.
I've got a top 5.
Have you got a top 5?
Yeah, I've got a top 5.
Go on then.
Go on then.
Give us your top
Top
5.
Actually,
Oh dear.
I've got a top 4. I've got a top 4. Clearly defined objectives.
Yeah.
My number 1.
No, that's a good one.
Give a budget. My number 2. Budget's important. So I think
we're going to come back to that in a minute.
We'll come back to that in a minute.
Come back to budget. Okay.
Success criteria.
Yeah.
And then setting a deadline as well. And I think with the setting deadline, it's about giving the agency as much time as possible. Because they'll already be working. We're going to be really honest, in an agency world, they'll already be working. And on the odd time when you really need something doing, then the agency will more than likely drop what they need to do to deliver it. But that should be the exception and not the rule. It shouldn't be every single time, we need this by next week, when actually you don't. You can't create great work if you don't have a long period of time, not even long, but a reasonable amount of time
Absolutely.
to create something that's really
Idea,
good.
gestation.
All of that stuff.
Review, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
Branding.
Exactly.
So that's my top 4.
So let's go back to budget then.
Yeah.
I know.
Or just getting the right people involved as well. That would be mine.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah, all the
Not
stakeholders.
just marketing as well. It could
know.
be product development. It could be HR. It could be any number
Who's
of
going to
different
say, what stakeholder's going to
parts
sign
of
off this brief?
Yeah,
What do they want to
absolutely.
see? And
How
I think that's
crazy
important
can
for us
we
to know
be?
up front.
Before you get shut down.
I think that's a really good point. I think in digital, that's one of the things that's always missed, and I know I've spoken about it before, but it's where the marketing team involves the IT team. If it's a digital project, if it needs a platform, an infrastructure, whatever, get the IT team involved, understand the security constraints, the infrastructure constraints, and put that as part of the brief as well. Because again, that will really help guide the project. Make sure that whatever's being delivered or proposed by ourselves or the agency in question are coming back with the right information that fits those requirements.
And there's nothing worse than coming up with great ideas. Let's go ahead, let's do it. 2 weeks later, oh no, somebody in the team doesn't like it, so we need to change everything.
Yeah.
For both the client and for the agency, it's important to get that right at the beginning, because nobody likes to have to do a U-turn and change everything.
Collaboration is key.
Identify those
Get the
stakeholders.
people involved that you need to be involved.
Yeah, identify them.
Sit down, break bread, talk good ideas.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So come on, let's talk budget.
Okay. So I've got a mindset about budget.
Go on.
I think there's been this long-term, it's not a gameplay, but a mindset of, if we tell the agency what our budget is, they'll spend it. That was my stomach. Wow. They'll spend it. But that's not the point, I don't think. I think it's, if we tell the agency what we've got, they can allocate the time and the response to brief that's necessary for that budget. I don't think it's any trickery in it. It helps us massively if we know, maybe not exact budget, but milestone,
A realistic
or a grouping.
range.
From, is it X or is it actually up here? So we can change and suit our creative to suit what your budget is. I think it's important, because if we guesswork, you can come out with all different kind of solutions, and I don't think it's the right. Am I saying this properly? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. It's about being, if that little bit of clarity will allow us to say, well, can we do can we do
a
this?
big video.
Can we do that much, or can we do that?
Can we
much?
think a little bit bigger?
How big can we go with this? How much importance are you putting on this and this project? Is it a national campaign, or is it just a local thing? And that's that. We need to understand that, because it then allows us to look at the different channels that we might want to go after.
How much your media spend might be.
Absolutely.
If we should actually do a video that's a bit more engaging rather than an email at that point, if there's budget to do that. It's all those thoughts and considerations.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if budget is tighter, maybe it means that we've got to be a little bit more resourceful in the way that we look at the campaign objectives themselves.
Yeah.
And come up with some other different ways of doing things.
It's always seemed very taboo. Ever since I've been agency side, it's always seemed very taboo for somebody to give you a budget
and
to work within.
I think
do you have a budget? Yeah.
But I think it's quite historical, because some of the creative agencies back in the day, it was a little bit cloak and dagger, it was a little bit cowboy in places, and I think it was natural not to show your hand. I think the landscape's changed so much now. There's 1,000,001 solutions to any problem. So I think it is critical.
But it's like going into a car showroom. I want a car. How much you got to spend? Not telling you. Deliver the car to my house.
It's the one thing where budget is, the first thing. Like when you're doing a creative advertising, no one wants to talk about the budget. But in any other medium, are you planning a day? Yeah. What's your budget? Well, it's this. You want to buy a house? Yeah. What's your budget? Well, it's
just maybe looking at slightly other areas of that, delivering that brief to us or to any agency. What's the best way to do that? Is it just fire an email over, or should it be done differently? What do you think, Rob?
This is a format thing.
Go on.
If I see a handwritten brief, I know I'm in for a tough week. I run out the door to a handwritten brief. I don't think we see many of those anymore, because that always says to me, you haven't had the time to think this through. If you're handwriting a brief down, I know this is format, I run a mile.
Does it arrive by carrier pigeon as well?
Well, that's the thing. The whole point of a brief is also, as a person writing it, it allows you to actually lay down the process of what you want in your mind, and you sometimes answer your own questions, you solve your own problems during
clarity,
that. You get that clarity because you're actually taking the time. So if I see something written on the back of a cigarette packet, I know it's time to disappear. But that happens rarely now.
Or emails with a couple of paragraphs.
Do you think?
That's
I
hard.
think sometimes it's helped me when you get that written brief. You have that time to absorb it, but then you verbally will be taken through it as well. That can really help, can't it?
Yeah, and I think so. And I think almost the response to brief includes a reiteration of the brief. Yeah, almost. To say, this is how we understand your brief, and this is what you're asking for. Because no matter what we say about, we should have this and have that, if clients don't give it to us, it's our job as the agency to investigate, to ask those questions: why, how, when. Yeah. So it is our job to dig deeper.
I see the process as you get the brief, you then digest it with the creative team, then you go back with the Q&As if you've got any, and then you do the response to brief. That's really like minimalising it down. But
I think so.
And then you can give them a schedule of this is when to expect. If you take it down to its really basic form, but you need that time. Q&A is huge, because there'll always be questions.
And plus, I think if the working relationship you have with that client, if it's a working relationship that that you can go in and you don't feel afraid to ask those sort of questions that really poke at the brief and really dig out the nitty gritty of it, and what are the expectations, what are the failure points. Where do we need to make sure that we're on point with this, and that everyone's going to be happy with the final outcome?
Yeah, what's that key message? What's that USP? What's that single-minded proposition that you've got? You absolutely have to get out there, and you want your audience to take away from whatever it is that we're
Sometimes I think we go about it the wrong way, and that the budget shouldn't be even talked about. It needs to be talked about, hear me out, is that if by digging and going through these questions, maybe you unearth the actual real value of the actual final product.
Yeah.
So that as you go through that, the client then finally realises, in actual fact, this is massive. This could be one of the best projects we've ever done, and the budget that we originally had assigned to you.
That's a good alternative.
But then you need to start somewhere, don't you?
I'm not suggesting. At the end of the day, you do need. Well, this is what we're thinking about, but then I think by talking about those things and going through those processes, then when we come back and say, we understand exactly what you're trying to do. This is our solution. This is what we're offering. this is what we think it's going to,
Yeah.
roughly cost to produce something like this. If you've gone through that process and talked them through it and had that working relationship, sometimes when things are bigger than they're expected, there's not that massive knee-jerk reaction to it because you've gone through it with them.
And I think if you go through that process with your agency, you're giving them the best opportunity to create something really good if you give them a good brief.
Mm.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
if you think about it, we are co-custodians of their brand with what we come up with from a good
Absolutely.
brief. So you're giving us that opportunity to create something cracking
Mhm.
with all that information that you give
Yeah,
us.
you're an external part of their body.
We are, exactly.
Absolutely.
You know.
I think it's that the
Co-custodians.
saying, if you've got 5 hours to cut down a tree, spend 4 hours sharpening your axe.
Yeah.
Get it right up front,
Nice.
and then you'll spend less time later on.
Nice analogy.
That's
4
a really good
hours.
analogy.
It's a big axe.
It's a big axe. It's a big tree you got to cut down.
What you got?
Yeah.
There you go. When writing a brief, make sure you sharpen that axe. Anyway, yeah. So our top 5. So to sum it up, I think we've run it because we've run out of time, guys. This has been a great podcast, but we've only got 5 minutes left, so we need to wrap up. So are we wrapping up our brief? What's number 1 brief for you?
Just that key message, point, or objective that you're trying to achieve.
Key
that
message
you want to
point.
convey.
For me, it would be delve deep, ask those questions.
I would initially keep the brief and succinct. Don't overload it with too much information.
Tiny brief.
Not tiny, but just not too much.
Small briefs?
information. Anyway,
Camilla.
I think that give your agency the space to be great and creative, because if you allow creative people to create good work, then they thrive, and that's what gives us passion within the industry. So if you give us that space to create something brilliant, then it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's briefing. I think we're going to expand on this throughout the weeks. I think what was the one we had coming up for next week?
It's basically taking away a brief and digesting it, what happens behind the scenes, and
Yeah.
So next week is
challenging
behind the
it was.
scenes of a brief and how we challenge it and take that information and create a stellar project. Be sure to keep your eye out for Camilla's template. I think you can download that from
Yeah.
the website.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, we haven't mentioned that our new website has actually gone live.
Yeah, it's gone live.
Yeah.
So be sure to go
Yay.
run out now, get your phone out, get your iPad out, put away whatever you were doing. Type in www.BDA.com, where you'll find our brand new website. Please have a look. Any feedback you've got on it would be absolutely amazing.
Mhm.
It's again on our social channels at ThinkBDA on LinkedIn and Twitter
And Instagram.
and Instagram, which apparently there's too much of my face on, so
Yeah,
you will
that's my
see
fault.
you will see a reduction of my handsome face. So that's it for this week. Anybody got any closing remarks?
No.
No.
Lovely stuff. Well, stay fresh. What was the other one?
Stay sharp.
That was it. I've got it's a lemon. Stay fresh. Stay sharp. See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.